they go in and they just assume that that's how you get better at skiing and doing that kind of stuff. It's like, well, no, this person's good at that because they built themselves up with all these other exercises. You know, play as many different sports as you can, or go out and do stuff that you like to do, have fun, challenge your body in different ways. And that's hard for me too. Even, I know I'm preaching it, but even as just like a lifter myself, like sometimes I want to put on more weight than I should. Instead, like, you need to build that capacity for sure. And that's what's going to keep you healthy is building those capacities up.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Athletic Stance Podcast. On today's episode, we have someone that I had the pleasure of meeting through social media, Instagram. He reached out to me actually offering his support for Academy of Skiing, and I figured that I would take the time to get him on the podcast and share with every single one of you guys what he does to help the US ski team, specifically halfpipe, slopestyle, and aerials athletes, to become the strongest athletes they possibly can be. We all know that strength is very closely associated with our ability to perform on the hill, and our ability to be strong is generally our ability to not only perform but stomp tricks. And I think a lot of us are wanting to stomp whatever it is in our life, and fitness can take us a long way. And Brett started out as an intern for the US ski team, and then after a somewhat short stint of doing strength and conditioning for baseball teams, specifically the White Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals, also an assistant sport performance coach at St. Louis University. He then dove into being the athlete development coach for the US Ski and Snowboard team in September of 2016. He works in a high performance setting to develop complete athletes. He is there to develop and implement strength and conditioning programs for all of the athletes, including freeski halfpipe, freeski slopestyle, and aerials national teams. He works with coaches and academies to help develop youth athletes, and uses things like force plates and gym aware to monitor athletes, monitor workloads, get analysis on velocity-based training, and just overall helps the athletes develop into the best possible performers that they can be. So without further ado, let me get Brett on the podcast.
My name is Brett Kelly. I'm a strength and conditioning coach with the US Ski and Snowboard. Actually, I think my position title is technically like athletic development coach, but I don't really know. Just because it goes way outside of strength conditioning sometimes when you're on the road, developing them as athletes in general. But yeah, my background, I'm actually from St. Louis, Missouri, so pretty far away from the mountains. But I grew up next to this shitty snow place called Hidden Valley, which is a little hill. And so I grew up going there, and then my family would take trips out to Colorado pretty regularly. And so I grew up skiing and actually switched to snowboarding when I was in 5th grade for some reason, because all my friends were doing it. And that was about the time that I started getting bored with the little hill in St. Louis. And luckily they started building a park out there. So I started just doing some basic slope skiing out there, or snowboarding out there. Nothing crazy, obviously, with a pretty small hill, but enough to, enjoy the sport and fall in love with it. And kind of kept that passion through college, where I was in charge of some like college trips, trying to get all these kids out to different mountains, which I'm sure most of the locals hate. Now that I live in Park City, I hate college week, but I got like 2 or 3 weeks for free skiing, so it worked for me in college, And then after college, I wanted to get into strength conditioning, and I never really thought about skiing and snowboarding as part of that. and I was getting my my master's and working on some internships at some local colleges in the St. Louis area, and then just kind of came across an internship with the US ski team. So I applied for that, and luckily got it. Came out here, and the whole place here and the whole staff here kind of blew me away, and I learned a ton. And after that internship, I went and actually worked in baseball just because there's a lot of opportunity there, and just stayed connected with the people here in skiing and stayed connected with some of my athletes. And eventually there was an opening and they wanted to bring me back on. So kind of a different way than probably most people think you get into strength conditioning, specifically with skiing and snowboarding. But that passion's been there for me since I was young with snowboarding. So I've always enjoyed being out in the mountains. So it's awesome to get out here and definitely get in over my head sometimes, because I think I can still do some stuff that I did when I was 18, and I follow some of these skiers off some jumps or try to follow them off a rail, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill myself. So I remember that I'm 30. So.
That's hilarious. Yeah. That's awesome. Did you ever so you never really probably imagined that this was going to be your life when you were younger, like maybe had ideas of working with athletes, but
yeah, not skiing specifically. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, obviously, looking back now, it totally makes sense for me. But when I was growing up, I guess I just never saw the either physical therapy side of skiing or the strength conditioning side of skiing. And it's you always think about that in more of a college setting or like a football setting or something like that. And even when I was in undergraduate, it was kind of just I never picked a specific sport I wanted to work with. I just enjoyed working with athletes, and I was athletic myself, and I was always kind of a gym rat. So those kind of all combined that with my snowboarding experience when I came here, and always wanted to come back here after my internship. So it didn't really hit home until I kind of came out here and started working with everybody.
Yeah, crazy. It's crazy how the universe will just bring us exactly where we need to be, especially if we don't meddle with it too much. Just let it happen.
Yeah, I tell people I'm from St. Louis, and they're like, "How'd you get into skiing?" But we got our new snowboarding strength coach, Matt Voss, out here. He's actually from Florida, so he interned out here. Same thing, just wanted some experience. And we do a lot of more sports science-based stuff out here, so it's a good place. Even if you're not involved in the skiing and snowboarding industry, which is kind of why he got involved, and then he kind of just fit with the snowboarding culture, and they all liked him a lot, so they brought him back on board. And we just got back from Saas-Fee a couple weeks ago in Switzerland, and he actually had to learn how to snowboard on a glacier, so that was pretty fun. So I was taking him up T-bars and trying not to let him fall in a crevasse or
something. Yeah, for real. That's funny. That's awesome. It's awesome how those opportunities present themselves, and how athleticism is applicable across the board. So if you're an athlete at one thing, it can allow you to have a better athletic performance in any other sport. And it's those foundational functional exercises or movements, if you understand them and understand leverage and physics, you can apply them kind of anywhere, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. We have so many people that come in here that I talk to that are either ski bums here in Park City to talk to me, or somebody that's actually competing and they're just not on the national team, and they kind of ask us what do you do to make your skiers better? And I feel like they're always expecting some specific ski exercise or something. And it's I'll gear my workouts a little bit towards what you need physically, but you're going to get there the same way as if these athletes need to be able to land, right? Well, a safety, for instance, in football, he needs to be able to change directions quickly. So when you're changing directions, you're absorbing force. When you're landing, you're absorbing force. So no matter what it is, we're going to be doing plyos, and we're going to be doing some kind of squats. And depending on your training age, that might just be bodyweight squats and kind of build you up from there and teach you how to do things to build that capacity, or it might be heavy squats underneath the bar if you're at that point in your career. So knowing that all those things kind of tie together in skiing and other sports.
Yeah, totally. It really, at the end of the day, when you can break it down on a whiteboard, it's a lot of the same thing, no matter what it is. Do you also deal with nutrition, or mainly just the strength and conditioning side of things?
So we have a head nutritionist here and high performance chef, Alan Tran. and he's in charge of all the nutrition side of things. I mean, that being said, my undergraduate's in nutrition, so I have a background in it, and I'll give athletes advice, but if it's kind of beyond my scope, I obviously give them over to Alan, and he kind of does most of the plans with them. If there's an issue with somebody, trying to lose weight or trying to gain weight, and usually they'll have meetings with him and kind of set things up. But like right now, he's out of town in Copper with some of the Alpine crew. So I had somebody here this morning that we're trying to put some more weight on, and I kind of had to have a little bit of a chat with him. And he sat down and talked to Alan via Skype too. So kind of a group effort, but he definitely leads the way.
Yeah. So like when you are talking with athletes that are at such a high level that, have been refining themselves for years and years and years, they're used to taking advice and applying it to their own system to, for the best use case. And you have this, like you want to take advice from the people that you surround yourself with, especially at an elite level. But is there a way that you're trying to coach these people to get them to get to their results? And I guess like that's kind of an abstract question, but like what's the strategy in creating the most change in people?
Yeah, I
If that
mean,
makes sense.
yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think that just depends on honestly on the athlete and like what they need. So you're gonna come in here. Like when I first came in, I didn't know, many of the athletes. I knew a few of them from when I was an intern, the older ones, but I didn't know a lot of them. And they come in, you have to meet them, and first off, build like trust with the athletes so they know you and they're gonna work with you. And then also figuring out what they need as athletes. So if they need flexibility because they can't get their grabs, if they need, maybe they have some kind of injury that they're rehabbing that we need to work on. They have, I don't know, strength issues where they're landing too deep and they're increased risk for injuries. So everybody's kind of a little different. That being said, I kind of base a lot of the programs around the same philosophies, I guess, on how to build strength or how to, build mobility or whatever it might be. And usually what I'll do is I'll build a program based around what I would want the perfect free skier to be doing if they didn't have any issues and they didn't have any problems going on. And then I kind of break down those programs per athlete. And it's like, okay, we need to adjust this way for this athlete because they need more mobility. We need to adjust the program this way for this athlete because they're not that advanced enough yet. And they need to build up just base strength. We're going to be doing more body weight stuff and kind of go from there. But it's all the same philosophies, really. And just some of the ways you get there, I guess, are different. That makes sense.
Yeah. If you were to break down like the most important qualities, and one might not be more important than the other because you could be super strong but inflexible and you'd never be getting your grabs. But what are those like pillars for creating the best freestyle skier? And does it differ between ski racer, freestyle skier, snowboarder? Does it differ in those?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely differentiates. And I think like free skiing and snowboarding so much newer than like alpine, whereas alpine it's been around for so much longer that there was a point when alpine was newer where they're not going to be doing strength and conditioning and stuff, right? And everybody's going to be a little bit weaker. And then somebody decided to start doing strength and conditioning stuff, and they started getting better, and then it keeps progressing from there. Like when free ski started, people were just skiing, and there's still people that just ski because you can still win that way, right? But the way sport goes in general is people are going to keep pushing themselves. And like you look at Shaun White, he talks about how much he attributes, being in the weight room. And I mean, he's an older athlete for snowboarding. He was able to, pull off a gold medal in 29 or 30 or something like that, which, for free skiing and snowboarding is pretty old. But I guess like the biggest pillars of free skiing, I would say, since it's such a skill-based sport, is time on the hill, right? So if you're healthy, you're going to be on the hill. So how are you going to stay healthy? You're going to stay healthy by being able to, lift your body weight, or what we call relative strength. So something I look at here is we have a force plate. They're going under the force plate. We put a bunch of weight on a bar they can't move. So they're at their bottom of their squat actually, and they just push against the bar. Bar doesn't move. And the thing on the ground, the force plate, tells us how much force they push. So we look at that compared to their body weight, and we usually want them like 2.5 times what their body weight is. And we pulled that number out of just looking at injury data. And usually, like, especially with free skiing, the number of ACLs, if you're underneath that number, are like way higher. That being said, if you're above that number, you still could tear your ACL because you're skiing. It's just not great for your knees. But the number of ACLs goes way down once you get above that 2.5 number. So that's kind of a goal we try to get all of our athletes at. And I mean, most of them are above there. Obviously, some of the rookies have some places to go, and they're also just growing because they're so young. So I think for free skiing, that is kind of one of my big things. And then from there, just make sure that they're mobile too. Like you said, like you can be strong as you want, but if you can lift 4 times your body weight, but you can't grab anything, like it's not going to matter for your sport. So trying to, make sure you're not building football players here. You're building skill-based athletes that have to be able to get in positions that are different than other athletes and be able to land in sometimes awkward positions and ski out of it and be healthy for the whole season. So that's usually my goal with my free skiers, is try to keep them healthy as possible. And then when you look at other ones, like you mentioned Alpine, for instance. Alpine definitely has more of a endurance-based side of things. I know it only lasts 30 seconds to 2 minutes, but if you see them at the end of the hill, they're gassed, right? Or snowboard or ski cross or whatever. But if you go to the end of a slope course, those guys aren't gassed. There's not a huge element of conditioning, unless you're hiking the pipe or something like that, which does happen from time to time, but it's not like a in competition type thing. So our alpine skiers definitely have to have more of a cardio-based side of things for sure, and be able to recover between runs faster. But both of them, I'd say free skis, snowboarding, alpine, moguls, aerials, everything, like they have to be able to land. Everybody has to be able to absorb eccentrically, whether that be coming around a turn in alpine, or whether it be, landing a triple cork off of the money booter at the end of X Games or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You got to be able to absorb your body weight and plus whatever force you have coming on top of you.
Yeah, totally. I had never heard that statistic for 2.5 times on the body plate. That's really cool. Like,
that was just from us looking at our own data, really. So
yeah, totally. It's cool. Like, as athletics, like the whole technological revolution has completely changed athletics in a lot of ways, and it's cool to see that you can start to actually really create a science out of all of it. And in the last, 10 years, I'm sure the scientific data is just like taking an exponential curve and being able to like decipher and be more like know the truth, or know, like absolutely know that what you're doing has significance. So I think that's probably pretty cool. You use an app to keep up with your athletes when they're on the road, right?
Yeah, we use a Visual Coaching Pro, and I've used a number of them throughout the years in strength and conditioning, and they're all pretty good. Basically, I can kind of write the program from here, and then they can just log onto the app, and it has videos of the workouts. It has a little diary thing that I set up with just questions, and they can fill that out, and it gets emailed to me, and then I can actually kind of collect that data. So going back to your point of how much technology has changed this industry in general, skiing and just sports in general. I think a big part of that is monitoring your athletes too. So knowing, I don't care if somebody hasn't slept good one night, but I have this thing set up on VCP where if they report under a certain number of sleep quality or sleep duration for 3 nights in a row, then it sends me an email, kind of alerts me, and I can try to dig into that a little bit more if I'm on the road with them, or if I know something's going on with them, I might not dig into it as much or whatever's going on. But it just alerts me from a distance a lot of times of possible issues that might be happening, which I think is huge, and goes back to my point of just trying to keep them on the hill as long as possible.
Yeah, totally. That's really cool because I'm in the process of finishing writing my book right now, and I'm in the body chapter, and I talked all about breath, hydration, like mind-body connection, sleep, and when I was growing up, I grew up ski racing. So when you're talking about ski racing and then the endurance side of things, it's crazy how much you can gas yourself on a course, like full on everything. But I didn't really understand how important sleep was. I knew that like have always been someone who needed a lot of sleep, but I didn't really understand like everything that was happening while I was sleeping. And now that I've gotten older and learned more about, like everything that is happening while I'm sleeping, it makes so much more sense to like making sure as an athlete, like you're an athlete 24/7. So you're paying attention to your breath while you're walking, the coordination while you're walking, your core and your, like having the right posture while you're eating and while you're sleeping and all this stuff. And it's just crazy how important having like that routine sleep schedule
Yeah,
is.
you sound like some of my older athletes now. They're like, I didn't know that when I was young.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely important. I mean, recovery is number one, because if you keep beating yourself in the ground, whether that be on the hill or in here, like you're gonna get hurt. And that's something else I look at, and I'm trying to figure out better ways to do is record their loads basically. So right now I'm doing it just by asking them, how long they either worked out or skied or jumped or whatever it might be, because we have an airbag here in the summertime, and then ask them how hard it was, and I just multiply those numbers together, and that kind of gives me a relative load of the day. And then you can compare 1 week, so 7 days, compared to the previous 30 days. So usually you want to stay underneath like 1.5 times what your average was over the last 30 days. So you don't want to be doing more than, 1.5 times what your average load has been over the last month, because it's just increased risk for injuries at that point. So, and that's something I'm trying to figure out how to monitor better on hill, just because we have so many things going on. And sometimes my athletes don't report as well as they probably should a lot of times. So we're trying to look into any kind of like wearable technology that doesn't hinder them as athletes and being free skiers, where they could put it on, and maybe we could look at, I mean, there's stuff where we can look at distances and just from GPS, but I would love something to be able to look at like a number of jumps hit, because, I can sit in a half pipe and record down however many jumps you hit all day, but let's face it, our guys are going to go through the slope course or go do their own thing too here and there, and we're going to miss some of it. So that's definitely something we're trying to work on here a little better and monitor it better.
No, that's really cool hearing all the numbers and statistics and like the way that you're calculating and sifting out that data, because it is definitely like it's so hard to say even on, like one given run, the amount of energy that's expended if you do double corks the whole way down the hill versus if you're just doing big stylish 180s and switch fives and stuff.
It's a mental thing too, like stress is stress, and whether that be mental stress because you're like worried about your run, or whether that be physical stress of landing a bigger trick or doing more runs, like your body deals with it the same way. It releases cortisol, and enough of that is going to break down your body eventually. So you gotta rest and recover.
Yeah, totally. How often do you have your athletes training? Like, do you make them take days off, like at least one day off a week or something like that, or ask them to, or I guess make them ask them. I don't know.
I mean, again, it depends on the athletes. Like, we have some of my athletes that want to lift 4 days a week and like pretty heavy, and they've built up capacity where they can, and they're not sore, they're not breaking down their body enough. And then there's others that I'm going to do body weight stuff with them 2 times a week maybe, and that's just because they can't really handle it because they're too sore from that, and or maybe they're out skiing a ton, and I don't want to crush them that much. But right now most of them are doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, heavy legs, or by heavy I mean like some kind of legs. Like right now I'm doing more speed work on Mondays, heavy lifting on Wednesdays, and then more of a circuit based thing on Fridays for most of them. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays are kind of cardio recover with some core, some shoulder work, stuff like that. And then if they have certain issues, I usually kind of plug them in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then obviously into their warm ups on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday if they have something going on with their lower body. So that's kind of right now. It changes here or there in season. A lot of my slope skiers going to Austria coming up here. For them, what I usually do, because I'm not going to be there, is through their VCP program. I have it set up where they'll have a warm up. They'll have one type of circuit workout, one type of strength workout, and then a couple of recovery workouts. And I just make sure that they know they need to hit each week. They need to do one of the strength. At least I say two workouts a week. I tell them they can do 2 strength, 2 circuits, or mix them, and then recovery whenever they need to, and then warming up daily. So I think as long as we hit strength once, like a heavy strength once every 30 days, that's good enough to at least keep that, maintain that strength throughout the season. And then just trying to pick those times to do it, So like when they come back from Austria, give them a few days to recover. We have like, I think a week or so until we hit copper again, or no, that's slope. Sorry, I have too many teams. 2 weeks till they hit dew tour. So I'll probably get them like half a week to recover, and then we'll hit heavy that like Friday and the following Monday, and then let them recover and go into dew tour fresh.
Do you work with athletes like you're saying, it's kind of overall athlete development? So are you working with them in the mental aspect as well?
We actually have a sports psych, and
Yep.
they'll do a lot of that stuff. And like we have a rookie camp, so they came in earlier this summer and meet with a lot of different people, including myself, Alan, our nutritionist, and then our sports psych, and they try to develop some of those tactics right away. And then I know some of my teams, we had team meetings earlier this summer with our sports psych, and they kind of sat down and tried to talk about developing routines and developing like mental routines, and then just developing together as a team and kind of how to help support each other and stuff like that. And then obviously if there's any other issues, they'll go there with them. So that's, I think, where they get a lot of that. I don't necessarily do a ton of that, which maybe I should be doing more of that. And I don't know if I just don't feel as comfortable like teaching it, because I don't necessarily do a great job with it or how that works, but definitely something I could probably look more into.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think the mental game is super huge. Even in like working out, I psyched myself out on getting in the gym for a long time because I would just overthought it so much.
Right.
And it's like, you can get in there and like you said, like you have athletes that are doing just body weight stuff 2 times a week. And like, it's like understanding that you have to start somewhere. And like, it's probably not a huge deal for those elite level athletes, but for just the average person, and maybe it is for sure. For quote unquote the average person, I know it's really easy. Like I would say the gym is 90% mental and 10% physical, because you get in there and then you have to like, you don't even know what exercises to do, or you don't know, you're like, this is a foreign landscape for me.
Yeah. And that's where I said, like, when I first came in, or we have new rookies that I meet, like trying to build a relationship with them right away is, I think, very, very important, just because then they have somebody they can trust when they come into the gym. And I mean, that's got to be hard for a lot of people, because I mean, most of them, they just grew up skiing their whole life and they're very good at it. And obviously they made the US ski team for a reason. And when you go into the gym, it's probably something that you're not good at or you haven't done. And like nobody likes to go do something that they're not good at or haven't done, Like I snowboard, I'm not good at skiing, so I don't ski. like, and I have gone and done it with some of my athletes, but I don't necessarily enjoy it as much. So trying to, on my side of things, trying to know that and have them come in and try to make it, a little easier at the beginning and make it fun too. I think is a huge part of it. So, and, especially with Freeski, there's different ways you can make it fun too. Like we have ramps and tramps area here where we have, if you skateboard, like I'm fine with my athletes going in and doing a warm up in the bowl instead of a bike, because that's probably going to get their body, they're probably going to go harder in that bowl than they're going to do it on a bike. So they're probably going to get a better warm up anyway, or go on the trampoline and play stick it, or, huck a pad back and forth or do something like that. So I think using all that stuff in the workouts is huge. And if you see some of my older athletes that have been in the gym a bunch, like if you look at their plyos, we're not just doing like basic plyos, we're doing spins. And at the end of a lot of their plyo workouts, I'll have them do like various box heights and box jumps, and I kind of let them like make it how they want to spin through it, and they'll kind of compete back and forth, and somebody will like almost pick a line, but it's like with plyos, and the next person has to try to do the same thing, and then we'll do the same thing with slack lining. And so we're doing stuff outside of just lifting, the lifting side of things, and then the body weight squat and circuits. Those are definitely the pillars, and then the rest of it is kind of, I guess, gearing it more towards your sport.
No, I think like when I got into the gym at first, I really had to force myself to do it. And it was right after I broke my back. I was like committed. I was like, I had to figure out ways to make it fun. And I had like the biggest thing for me was the amount that a workout could impact the rest of my day. So I needed to limit how hard I pushed myself. And I started to learn that like if I went like 60 or 70%,
or under, I could go back to the gym the next day, or I could go work out the next day instead of just feeling like I'm like, I have to go 110% and then I'm just wrecked for a while. And then I don't want to go back.
Yeah, I mean, actually, a lot of my athletes, like the first time I started working with them, or when they really start coming in here, is after an injury, unfortunately. And I mean, as much as it's nice to see them get back on the hill and work with them and build that relationship, like I would much rather not have to build that through an injury. Try to build that beforehand, and have them develop some things in the gym here that can help kind of prevent some of those. And I mean, some of them will see it and know that, and like for instance, I remember at World Champs 2 years ago, watched 2 years ago in Pipe, watching during, I think it was during training, watching Gus and Dave both deck like back to back in the same spot, and they're both pretty big guys and work out a bunch. And then some of the slope skiers who were watching next to me were like, I don't know if I would get up like after that. Like those guys are pretty well built for that. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should think about that. Like next time you're crashing or come to the gym and work with me. I'm just here to try to be a resource for you to try to make you stay on the hill and be healthy as long as possible.
David's one of those guys that's like, he can take a beating and get back up, and a lot of it, he's built a little bit bigger, but he's militant, disciplined on what he's doing. Do you eat a specific diet personally to keep yourself more optimized, or do you try to lead by example?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the time of the year. Like right now, I just kind of I usually do more of like Olympic weightlifting myself, just because that's kind of what I grew up doing and enjoy doing, and I like lifting heavy. That's just kind of what I've always done. But you got to take a break from that every once in a while. So recently, I just switched to more of a bodybuilding type workout where I'm trying to eat like 4,000 calories a day, like 50% carbs, and doing a lot more high rep lifts. And yeah, it's hard to eat 4,000 calories a day. Like at least trying to eat it clean and not just like all fat. It's the hard part. But I got married last month, and and then went to honeymoon, and then went to South Bay, and I was gone for a month in Europe eating cured meats and cheeses because you're in Switzerland, Spain, and Italy, and came back expecting to be like huge, but I also wasn't lifting then, and I lost like 8 pounds, and I was like 198. I'm usually like 10 pounds more than that, or 15 pounds more than that. So that was kind of like, all right, well, I got 2 months. It's winter time. I'm going to put some weight back on and try to build up some strength this winter, and then go into the spring and do some. I'm going to do a lifting competition this spring, hopefully. So I like to set goals for myself with stuff like that, and try to continue being an athlete and competing with, whether it be lifting, or I just started doing jiu-jitsu this summer, or just lifting in here with other coaches or athletes, or whether it be snowboarding. And I think it's good to continuously have goals and kind of stay in that athlete mindset for sure. But as far as like a specific type of diet, I don't really have anything crazy, unfortunately. Seems like the keto diet is a big thing these days. In a lot of my skiers are asking me about it. And just had a conversation with somebody today about it that's trying to put on weight, and I was like, that's probably not the best thing for you to be doing, trying to put on weight. So sometimes people see stuff and they hear about it and it sounds like a good idea, but it's not necessarily great for them, or great for an athlete necessarily that's trying to put on weight. So I think just being open to those things and having those conversations is huge.
Yeah, totally. I've messed around with the ketogenic diet. I've messed around with intermittent fasting for sure. I still do intermittent fasting. I haven't been keto in a while. I was keto up until a certain point this summer. And it's fun to like mess around with it and discipline yourself to be able to like really, I think that's a really beneficial quality. A lot of like on the female side of things, diets have like this bad connotation because a lot of it has to do with obsessing about the external representation of themselves, but I think that it's really it's good to have that discipline of being able to be like, A, just monitor what you put in your body, but B, like having the discipline to pick and choose what you're going to eat is super important as an athlete, and just super important to be able to just like pick and choose, like make those decisions that are the best decision for you, even though it may not be the most fun decision in the moment, you know? I think that's really important as an athlete.
Yeah, I think just getting them to kind of understand some of those things, like I'll take some of the younger athletes, rookies when they first start. A lot of times, like to the grocery store, and some of them are out on their own for the first time, and then they're 16 or 17, and they're trying to show them like this is the easiest way to shop and get some healthy foods, and like not trying to push a diet on them, just general health. And Alan does a good job teaching them how to cook. Sometimes they'll have classes here, or just showing them different recipes or whatever it might be, and trying to build that. I think from the ground up is a great idea. Not necessarily having them do a diet unless they need to. Obviously there's certain times where you have something going on where you're going to need a specific diet. But
yeah, totally. Yeah, I remember when I was growing up ski racing, I'd like go on my own. I think Alyeska was, we had a Super G and a downhill up in Alyeska. And that was one of the first times where I was just like, I don't even really know how to grocery shop. Like, I don't know what to get right now, what to eat.
When I worked in baseball, like, you got a lot of kids come over, Dominican kids that are 16 or 17. And, again, I've never been away from home, never been out of the Dominican, and they don't speak even the same language here, and like they're used to just eating chicken and rice in the Dominican, like that's kind of most of their diet. And we're in North Carolina somewhere in like some small town, and they're like, what do I eat? So trying to work with them, like teach them how to cook and eat stuff on the road was always a challenge too, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And as athletes, you have so much that you're trying to balance, from, like maintaining your posture all the time and consciously breathing and hydrating yourself, and, making sure you get your stretch in or your yoga in or workout in for the day, whatever it is, or, and then it's like, oh, and I need to cook for myself and I need to pay attention to all that. It can be a really overwhelming process, that's for sure. Yeah, I remember. That's funny thinking about people from the Dominican coming to the US, because I remember my first time in Chile at the grocery store, like so lost. You had no clue what to get there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like advice for some of the younger athletes, I think one of the biggest things I always see is a lot of the athletes are sometimes trying like more advanced exercises, or standing on BOSU balls and doing something, or stability balls or whatever. And a lot of times they're doing that because they see one of their, idols doing that on Instagram or on Facebook, whatever it might be. And they don't really think about all the work that athlete put in to be able to even do that. They go in and they just assume that that's how you get better at skiing and doing that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, no, this person's good at that because they built themselves up with all these other exercises. And because of that, they got them better at skiing or helps them get where they're at. So I think if I give any advice to younger athletes, it's, play as many different sports as you can, or go out and do stuff that you like to do, have fun, challenge your body in different ways. Like, don't go out and just do one thing. When you come in to the gym, like, don't be scared, like you said, like, come in and start doing some body weight movements and kind of build those mechanics, whether it be just like one of the basic things I do with a lot of my athletes, and even with the ones that are more advanced, beginning of the off season, we just do various leg circuits. And a lot of times that starts off just with like body weight squats, body weight lunges, body weight step ups, and squat jumps. And we'll build up to 3 or 4 rounds of like 10 to 15 reps of all those. And I mean, that's a quad burner for anybody right away. And you're not doing any weight. And then eventually we'll build up to doing that with some weight. If your mechanics are there, we'll build up to doing that underneath the bar. And I think just knowing that you don't necessarily have to push yourself, like, not push yourself, but you don't have to ramp up everything, I guess, as quickly as some people would want to. Because I know And that's hard for me too. Even I know I'm preaching it, but even as just like a lifter myself, like sometimes I want to put on more weight than I should. Instead, like you need to build that capacity for sure, and that's what's going to keep you healthy is building those capacities up in your joints and in your muscles.
Yeah, definitely. I know that I can sometimes try and like throw more weight and then on, and I don't have quite the best functional movement behind it. And then all of a sudden I'm slightly out of balance, or like I'm like, like my
Yeah.
shoulders, one of them will be tighter than the other one. And it just like completely messes with my whole physiological structure. Cause that one, like it was just like 5 pounds too much on military press or whatever. And then it made me super imbalanced and one started compensating and then just all downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, like a lot of people know like what power cleans are, and a lot of athletes that do like to work out, like to do those or like to try to get to those. But I mean, there's some people that just don't have the mobility to get there. Don't have the mobility to do an overhead squat, and I'm not going to force you to do that, and you shouldn't like feel like you have to do that to get better. There's other ways to get around that. As much as I love Olympic lifting, like if I see one of my athletes doesn't have the mobility to be in a front squat position, we're going to go do dumbbell or hex bar squat jumps, and you're still going to get that weighted explosive jump. You're still going to get that landing with the weight. So there's ways around some of those exercises that if they don't work for you, then you can do something else that gives you the same benefit.
Yeah, I think, that's one of the things in society that we make this assumption that we're all built exactly the same. So what worked for him or her is going to work for us. And a lot of it's like you see the things that work for other people and you go and try them and try to implement them. But then you got to take inventory on what's working for you and what's not. And it's like, having interviewed Alex Ferreira and David Wise last fall before the Olympics, they were on completely different routines for working out, but they both worked individually for them and led them to success, right?
I think it's easy to do that, especially with super skill-based sports like skiing, because there's multiple ways to be a good slope skier, to be a good half-pipe skier, right? Like if I'm trying to be the best Olympic weightlifter in the world, there is still some variance, but it's less.
Yeah.
I got to pick up the weight or I don't.
Right. Yeah.
I need to do to get to that point. For Dave and Al to be able to do the same trick, they're going to get there different ways. I mean, they have different body types in general. Like you see Dave Weiss and you see Torin, and they're like completely different body types, but they both go huge and do ridiculous stuff in the pipe. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's pretty cool that skiing is one of those where you can have like John Spriggs, tall, just big, giant MF. And then, someone like Torin or, like Alex Ferreira is still, strong, but it's not like he's huge by any means.
But like all those guys, even if they are smaller, like Torin and Al come in and like they both have very strong legs. Like they're just naturally strong guys. And I mean, they're lean, obviously, for the sport. You have to be able to flip those speeds and do those tricks. But then you have, on the slopestyle side of things, you have some of those guys over there are very different sizes too. And I don't know. Actually, we were just talking about this the other day. It seems like a lot of the slope guys are taller than the pipe guys. And I don't know if that's just on our team specifically, or like what the advantage is there, but that just seems to be like starting to become like a little bit of a split. Not saying there's not tall guys in pipe, but there's just like way more on the slope side of things. I don't know. My theory was that was like more of a balance side of things when it comes to like doing rails maybe, but I have no idea. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you could think like wider stance on the rails and stuff like that. You could also think that a taller person is going to have more, centrifugal force acting on them. And since there is such a minute landing zone in half pipe, it might be more advantageous to be able to have that less centrifugal force to pull you off in a direction outside of the wall.
But then on the flip side, you got Dave has won 2 gold medals and is like 6 foot. So
exactly.
That's where it comes back to. It's a skill-based sport, and you can have various size people and various shapes and various strengths, and they could end up in the same spot.
That it's like the great equalizer. Skiing, it really doesn't matter who you are. You can be good at it.
and it is a newer sport. So like you look at some of the older sports, like aerials, where moguls and aerials is kind of where free skiing came from, and you're like, most of my aerial skiers are all pretty small guys, pretty lean guys, but they're also doing like you know quad twisting, triple flips, or now they're starting to do 5 twists, and they got to be able to spin super fast.
Yeah, totally. What do you think the most important exercise is to focus on as a skier? Like especially getting prepped for the ski season, or like let's say someone doesn't ski super often, but they have their trip that they're getting ready for. What's the most important exercises to focus on to get ready and make sure you're
Yeah.
not hurting yourself, maximizing that time on the hill?
I mean, I think the easiest one would be say is just squats and like making sure the mechanics are there. Like you can have somebody come in here and do squats, and you can kind of tell right away if they're in risk for injury. You can see their knees caving in. So, doing squats, driving those knees out, and going back to your point of not everybody's built the same. Like knowing that your squat stance might not be the same as somebody next to you, and that's fine. I don't like to tell somebody to have their feet straight or have their feet out. I tell them to kind of put their feet shoulder width and tell them whatever's comfortable for you. Because if you get down in a position, you're feeling pinches in your hips, that might not be the best squat stance for you. So trying to find that out. So doing that, and then especially with skiing, I like to do a lot of single leg work too. So whether that be like split squats or lunges or lateral lunges. I use a lot of those in my warm ups for my guys, and I have them do a lunge circuit where they'll lunge forward, diagonal, sideways, drop step, and they'll do like a cross behind lunge. It's kind of getting them used to being in those different ranges of motion. And being an athlete, like being okay with having your knee go past your toe when you're squatting, or when you're single leg squatting or lunging, having your knee kind of go in those different directions, because that's going to happen when you ski, right? If I was a personal trainer, was having some soccer mom who's in her 40s come in, like who might have knee pain and might not have a huge training background, I'm probably going to not have her knee go in front of her toe. But I think for most of the athletic population, they have to be ready for the fact that those kind of things are going to happen to them when they ski. So having that in your head is huge. Kind of just thinking about those positions you're going to have to be put into, and then also, you mentioned flexibility earlier. Flexibility is huge, but also not just being flexible, but being strong in those ranges of motion too. Because you can be as flexible as you want, but if you get in those deep ranges of motion, like a deep squat, for instance, when you're skiing or landing and you're not strong down there, that's a recipe for disaster. So, making sure you're using movements in those deep ranges of motion to kind of build that strength.
Totally. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was, landing and practicing kind of dissipating that force throughout your body. Do you have any recommendations? I mean, squats are really good for that because you're absorbing force. Is there anything plyometrically that you do, or anything plyometrically that you're like watching for to make sure that it is more functional or less at risk in a landing situation?
Yeah, I mean, like going back to what I was saying about the squat, like what kind of watching the knees, like your knees should be kind of driving out, your chest should be up a little bit when you're landing. Usually when I'm bringing somebody on that's hasn't lifted with me before, or somebody that's coming back off injury, we'll start off doing eccentric squats where they're going 5 seconds down with some light weight and working on that eccentric strength, which is like the down portion of the squat, right? So 5 seconds down, or even pause squats where they have to pause at the bottom, and getting used to being at that bottom range of motion with some strength. And then we'll go over eventually doing plyos. I like to start off plyos jumping onto a box, because you're jumping with less force of a landing, right? And then moving to just regular squat jumps with no box. And then eventually doing depth drops where they're in a box, and they just step straight out and stick the landing. And then from there you can do depth drops or depth jumps, I guess, which is kind of where you step off, hit the ground, then jump up into a direction. And at this point now, being close to the season, we're doing that with like reactional things. So I'll like throw a ball one direction, so they land and they have to go either jump that direction or like spin that direction, whatever it might be, depending on the athlete and where you're at. But that's kind of how I build up my plyos generally.
That's awesome. I love like when I was working out with my personal trainer and physical therapist after ACL surgery last year, there was lots of like reactivity training with like, being told a direction to move or a direction to spin, and jumping, focusing on the whole functional structure of it all, and staying balanced and paying attention to directions. Like complete mind body overload, but still so much fun.
Yeah. Right now, some of the more advanced athletes that I have, we'll do plyos or landings on more like unstable surfaces. So I'll have them like hop off the box onto like a Bosu, or we have this huge like mat, really thick, probably like 2 foot thick mat that we use underneath our climbing ropes. I'll have them do like squat jumps on there, which is almost like doing it in sand. So just getting that unstable surface, I think, is good for them too. And they get a lot of that with tramping, but they kind of hate/enjoy it. So the unstable surface landings and jumps. So I think it's good for their sport.
That's one thing that David focused on a lot when we were talking about it, was like unstable surfaces. He was all about that because, you can always train for the perfect conditions, but training for the less than perfect conditions, like the Olympics this year, the conditions weren't exactly perfect. The way that the temperature lined up and the way the pipe was just, it wasn't perfect this year. And I think that's what gave David an advantage, is he performs really well under pressure, but he also trains for less than perfect conditions.
Yeah. I think it's something that we can do better at as a team too, is like when the conditions aren't right, like continue to train and not just go in because the pipe's not good or because the snow's not good. Because you get to those finals sometimes at X Games or Olympics or wherever, and it might be snowing and the pipe might be oververt. Well, and you still got to drop in. But it's hard to find that balance of like when you should continue to train in those situations or when it's unsafe too. So that's sometimes where it's hard.
No, I think that that's an important thing to do just as an athlete in any sport, is to be able to push past and train, in the conditions where I remember being at Mount Hood and it was just dumping rain and like you're wearing a trash bag and, but you're out there and you're skiing and then you kind of have that, I can handle anything, I remember, like freezing rain and I did just fine. So
yeah, that's where that mindset kind of comes in you were talking about earlier. I think it's a huge thing. And 2 years ago, we were Deer Valley and it was dumping during finals. And you got to jump. So I think, having that experience helps.
Yeah, totally. What's one piece of encouragement or wisdom that you would pass along to younger athletes that want to make it to that higher level and want to really experience success at a high level, based around like the fitness and everything?
I guess like in skiing specifically, just because it's so skill based, like, get out there on the hill and like enjoy it. You guys, most people started this sport because they love it. So like always remember that. A lot of some of our older guys, and when they get done with the Olympics, are kind of mentally spent, and some of them went out and just did some trips afterwards just because, to remember why you're skiing and why you love it, and go out with your friends and film and have fun and, use the gym to keep yourself healthy. It doesn't have to be like a gym rat, but, doing those warm ups and those cool downs and doing that stuff daily, that's going to help you be a better skier and help you, stay on the hill as long as possible, I think is the biggest piece of advice.
Love that. You've got to travel probably quite a bit with the team. It sounds like you spend a lot of time there, but what's one of your favorite travel tips or travel hacks? Especially traveling can be really taxing on the body, and you can just be stiff or
Well, as far as being stiff, like the day of travel, when we get wherever we get into, unless it's like super late, I try to get people to do something, whether that be just going out and kicking a soccer ball around or like having a yoga session, depending on where you're at. But moving the day of, and as far as like jet lag goes, if you get in, and a lot of times you're not getting in like right at the perfect hour, you need to stay awake. Like doing a workout is going to help you stay awake. It gets everything moving, it gets your endorphins up. And then I email out to a lot of my teams when we travel. There's this website called Jet Lag Rooster, and you can actually type in like where you're going, where you're coming from, when you normally sleep, and you can map it out from like 3 days previously. So you kind of start adjusting your sleep cycles, and it'll tell you like when to seek blue light, when to not seek blue light, when to take melatonin, that kind of stuff. And I'll send it out to my athletes just to give them some more information. So I think those are some good travel tips for sure. Go check out Sasve. It's awesome.
Awesome. What's the best place to find you?
I actually have an Instagram page, just BK Strength Coach. My initials Brett Kelly there. So yeah, you can always DM me there or whatever.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Brett Kelly. I'm a strength and conditioning coach with US Ski and Snowboard, and now is the time that we're getting our athletes prepared for next ski season. So don't miss out. Hop on my website, bkperform.com. Hop on the membership page, get some program specifics to skiing and snowboarding, and make sure you have a good season next year.
Hey, just one more thing before you go. I wanted to say thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope that you really enjoyed it. A couple things that I would ask that you do if you enjoyed today's episode. Number one, go follow us on Instagram at The Athletic Stance Podcast. Number two, if you don't mind leaving a review, rating it, and subscribing, it always helps. It helps spread the word. It helps me know what you guys are enjoying or not. And if you don't mind leaving a comment on Instagram, letting me know what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying, I will always take into consideration. And feel free to send me a message with recommendations on who you'd like to hear from, what you'd like to hear us talk about. And as always, thank you so much for listening, for your time, and we'll see you next time at the Athletic Stance Podcast.